So today I'm looking at unusual experiences. I'm particularly interested because I'm aware that there may or may not be a link with mental health. And then would everybody like to turn their to mute themselves momentarily? That would be good. So I'm looking at these experiences, and there's lots of people who have studied survival beyond death and unusual experiences. And I've approached some people, some celebrity scholars, because I felt that there was a link that people with so-called mental health problems could be tuning in to those kind of dimensions. And people said, Natalie, you're absolutely wrong. So there is a divergence of opinion on this. Obviously, I don't think I'm wrong, but a lot of people think I'm out of order. But I'd be interested in hearing your perspectives on this. I'm going to start, as usual, to offer a PowerPoint presentation, and then if you've got any comments that you'd like to say, or if you think I'm wrong or out of order, then do make a comment, because as I say, quite a few people think I'm wrong. So I'm looking across different cultures about survival beyond death. And what I want to do is explore cultural beliefs about what happens after death and what are the implications for those who remain. And the kind of topics I'll look at are loss and bereavement, end-of-life experiences, near-death experiences, and out-of-body experiences, and then beliefs about life after death, like reincarnation. And we'll also look at organ memory, because some people claim that there's a memory. So many people believe that the individual doesn't die when the human body dies, that ancestors continue to exert an influence over their living relatives, or in some religions that jinn are discarnate beings which can influence living people's mental health. And what I found is that if people have negative or frightening experiences, the automatic assumption is that they're having a mental health problem, whereas if they see a benevolent experience, it's a religious or spiritual experience. So not everybody views the same. I've got a couple of quotes here from Elisabeth Kubler-Ross, who was a psychiatrist, a Swiss-American psychiatrist, and she said, after your death, when most of you for the first time realize what life here is all about, you'll begin to see that your life here is almost nothing but the sum total of every choice you have made during every moment of your life. Your thoughts, which you are responsible for, as real as your deeds, and you'll begin to realize that every word and every deed affects your life and also has touched thousands of lives. And she became very interested in death and dying and the narratives of patients. And she felt that death was a highly creative force. The highest spiritual values of life, she said, can originate from thought and study of death. And she said, watching a peaceful death of a human being reminds us of a falling star, one of a million lights in a vast sky that flares up for a brief moment, only to disappear into endless night forever. And also in India, I went to the ashram of Sri Aurobindo, who wrote a lot on consciousness and the soul's journey after death. And he said, at the time of death, the being goes out of the body through the head. It goes out in the subtle body and goes to different planes of existence for a short time until it has gone through certain experiences, which are the result of its earthly existence. Afterwards, it reaches the psychic world where it rests in a kind of sleep until it's time for it to start a new life on earth. So he says the consciousness by its very nature is immortal, and in order to manifest in the physical world, it assumes more or less lasting material forms. I've got a couple of examples from a GP who was interested in bereavement and the visions that people had after their spouse had died or at the time of bereavement. He studied this and he found many people found it helpful that there was some kind of continuity after a spouse had died. And in the old days, doctors, nobody spoke to the doctors about these revelations and visions because there was an assumption that we'd be certified insane. Freud dismissed them as psychotic hallucinations, and the clergy considered them contrary to belief. So things have changed since then. And Dr. Dewey Rees, he found that 39% of widowed people had a sense of the presence of the deceased. 14 people can see them, 12% hear them, and people feel as if they've been touched. People don't seek these experiences deliberately, but they happen spontaneously. And there has been research done in America where there's almost identical findings. And I'll stop sharing for a moment. Can I ask, has anybody here had those kind of experiences after a spouse has died?
I had.
Elsa, would you like to say?
I had, yes. When my husband was, we were together, living here, he used to every day to put his hand when he arrives. He do that in my head and kiss my face when he arrives. Every day, every day, every day. When he passed away, after that, every night he came for 1 year, do the same every night before I sleep. 1 year, and he stopped it and never more.
Mm. And did you find his presence comforting?
Of course, it was really, really, because it was my Lord of my eternal life.
Okay, thank you, Elsa. Has anybody else had an experience after somebody's death? Peter, thank you. Would you like to say? Would you unmute yourself?
Can you hear?
We can hear you.
This took place, my wife died in January, but this was an event in September. I'm an enthusiastic dancer and also meditate. It just happens that at Epsom Mental Health Week event, there was a lady there. She practices or teaches what she calls dance movement meditation or dance or movement meditation. and she told me about it. She had learned this technique from an American woman who had developed it, who came to England last year. So Vicky, that's the name of the lady I met. So she said once a month she just started this practice in a church in Epsom. So I went to it. The building, it isn't actually the church building, but it's a very, very fine hall built onto the church. A beautiful large room with big beams and a beautiful wooden floor with lovely decorations. Now, part of the technique is to dim the lights, so they're very, very low. And I remember also, say at Christmas time, people often hang lights on the tree out in the garden, a lot of little lights. So she had arranged a big string of these little lights round the room as well. Well, I've been in many, many dance studios, but the moment I walked in the door, I had a wonderful feeling of being in this beautiful atmosphere, lovely building, dim lights and these little lights. Now the technique, what she did, I'll describe this because it will explain how it was I had the experience.
Yes, do describe it in briefly.
Okay. So anyway, the light, she plays a lot of music, devotional music, and halfway through she put a lot of silk scarves on the floor for us to pick one up if we wanted and move it around. Well, I've done dancing using veils and so on. So I picked up this white scarf with blue letters, and towards the end, when the music became very beautiful and devotional, I had this sense to put this scarf over my head like a woman would. And then slowly, over a period of 3 or 4 minutes, I suddenly had this sensation that this was what a woman does. I'm beginning to feel like a woman, which, well, I've had past life regression, so I'm familiar with altering levels of consciousness. And as I was feeling that sensation, about at arm's length to the right, the vision, the face of my wife appeared. And of course it was very, very emotional. And then very slowly her face or head came towards me and completely merged with me. It was an overwhelming experience, but just as significantly, about 3 or 4 minutes later, I saw the head in the same position, about an arm's length, of a face of a woman, and I can just describe her as being a saint. She also had a white covering overhead.
So that sounds like quite an amazing experience and very healing for you.
It was extremely overwhelming, and I thought, because of my interest in the psychic world, that I assumed that the vision of the woman that I called a saint was either a higher guide who had brought and accompanied my wife, or also wanted to appear with her. It was really like a truly wonderful blessing.
Thank you, Peter, for sharing that. That's very kind of you. Does anybody else have an experience, or shall I carry on? Carolyn, would you like to unmute yourself?
Couldn't get off then. Mine was just after my husband died. It wasn't a vision or something, but I'd got up early one morning and I'd opened the post and I was just reading some documents I had to sign, and all of a sudden the radio came on. It turned itself on, and it was actually Michael Jackson singing "You Are Not Alone." I don't know how it happened. It had never done it before. and it just came on with this song. So I actually went and turned it off and pulled the plug out. I thought, I don't know if I am, but I did have dreams when he died. One in particular was so lifelike, and it was I was taking him somewhere. I was taking him to this big house I didn't know, and when I got there, it was full of people, all these different people. And I can remember taking him into this house and saying, "You will take care of him, won't you? You'll look after him." And whoever was there was saying, "We'll take care of him, don't worry, we're going to look after him, he'll be fine with us." And I can remember leaving the house, in this dream, leaving the house on my own and just standing, looking up and down the street thinking, which way do I go? Where do I go from here? So I would probably say that was more my subconscious working out how I was going to handle things, because we were so close, we did everything together, and I just felt totally alone. I tried to rationalise it as that. My friend, who's a great believer, that people come back and be with you whichever way they can, so through dreams or whatever. She believes that he turned the radio on. She believes he came to me in a dream. So I did continue a few years. I did now and again just had these dreams, but it was so real, so really was there. I could get hold of him in these dreams.
Thank you.
They weren't so long, but now and again I still get one. Very comforting.
Thank you, Carolyn. So we've seen just from the few people here that it's normal to have those kinds of experience, and this is what I'd like to continue exploring. I'll look at first end-of-life experiences. Again, they seem to be normal, that people have them on their deathbeds. And the psychiatrist Peter Fenwick here, he's done some research into those experiences and the impact they have on relatives and friends. And he says sometimes the dying want to talk about their experiences, but they may feel that they'll be judged. But they do find the experiences calming. And Peter Fenwick says they may be part of the dying process, and they may include religious figures or deceased relatives or tunnels of light. This is an older painting of the tunnels of light. And there may be changes in room temperature or unexpected moments of lucidity. And my question is to everybody, if you think about it, how prepared are we as a society to look at these kind of questions that occur in the last few days of life? Because in the past we didn't used to train, we used to train staff in palliative care, but not in what is the meaning of death, what happens at death. Peter and his wife Elisabeth, they did a book, The Art of Dying, and they investigated 300 near-death experiences where hospital patients travelled through tunnels and saw the light. And some of them travelled outside the room, like they had remote viewing, and some saw situations occurring elsewhere. But very few people travelled very far. But there was the same story. They repeated seeing deceased or figures or religious people or visions of the future or brilliant light, as if they had extrasensory perception. And I'll just include this unusual case. There are many, many cases. There are many cases that this is one by, sorry, I can hear people, I can hear talking. This case is one by Kenneth Ring, and he did a study of a woman who was floating above her body in a hospital emergency room, and she was near the ceiling and she was watching the female nurse and the male doctor working on her body, and she travelled up through the hospital ceilings until she was above the roof of the building, and then she had a panoramic view of her surroundings and heard harmonious music. And this case, they said, was particularly unusual because she was blind since she was born, but during her visions, then she had birth. And I've got just done, I like diagrams, this belief about the nature of reality. We've got conception and birth, we did that in earlier sections, where there's the biological model of conception, or there's a model with spiritual assistance, and then death, there's the biological model, full stop, end of conversation. And then consciousness after death, so there's aspects of good and bad death, reincarnation and rebirth, things like ancestral spirits or earthbound ghosts. These diagrams I put in my book, excuse me, a moment's advertising, the book Cultural Perspectives on Mental Wellbeing. So a lot of the diagrams that I use are included in that. And I've just put a few models of reality here, that we're born, we live a bit of time, we die, end of conversation, end of story. And then this one, we're born, we live a bit of time, we die, then we become an ancestral spirit, or we've got a soul that goes to heaven or hell. And then this one is the Sikh one, where we're born and after we die we merge with God. And this one where there's the physical world and the spirit world, and there's a place, an intermediary place where people can be seen. And there's these are all models, other explanations, that after death we go to some other place, or we reincarnate, we spend time on earth, then we go to the spirit world, then we come back. Then there's reincarnation, you reincarnate in the same gender and the same ethnicity and the same family, or there's others that you reincarnate to other place and kin. So there's all kinds of models of explanation. So I'm interested in what's everybody's explanation. Is it that you're born, you live a bit of time and you die, end of story? Or do you have a different model of life? And my question is, what's your model of life, of what happens? And do you think your belief or staff belief or the beliefs that you have about death, do they influence how you live? So how do your own beliefs influence you? Does everybody believe that you live a bit, you die, end of story? No. I can see Elsa, Krishna, Peter, Tim, do you want to say any? Yusuf? so not everybody believes that. Yusuf, did you want to say what your beliefs are?
Not really, I'm following. I was concurring with you when you said life, when you die, everything ends like that. I was in agreement with you that perhaps no, it has to be something solid, profound, through the experience of death.
So we have a different experience. Tim, did you want to say anything? Will you unmute yourself?
Okay. Yeah, it's made a huge difference. I don't believe in life after death. I know from personal experience. And so that's made a big difference in how I lived I took many more risks than I would have if I'd thought that would be the end of me. I would have lived a very different life.
So because you believed in continuity, you acted
No,
differently?
I don't believe in continuity.
Okay.
I know it exists. I'd regard belief in continuity. I wouldn't take risks on a belief. I think that'd be far too big a risk.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Tim. And we've got Metal Rabbit, who said she experienced phenomena known as phone calls from the dead as well. I think other people may have had that. Who else would like to comment on the belief? Elisabeth, would you like to unmute yourself?
Okay. Yes, hi. Well, I think it's very interesting to share my experience with my own son, who was 20 years old, and he passed away. But before he passed away, 2 months before he passed away, he had this near-death experience that you were telling before. And there are many thousands of examples of that experience, but I have my own son tell. Okay, he was asthmatic, and in one midnight at home, he had this severe attack also, and he passed away in our,
Yeah.
with us. And when we went to we called an ambulance and everything, and went to the hospital. And when we arrived to the hospital, they told us that we can't do anything. He has died. And well, you can imagine we yelling and crying, my husband and me. And I don't know how many minutes after that, like 20 or half an hour, or I don't know, 45 minutes, he was in a bed in the hospital, and he woke up and he said, "Where I am?" And well, everybody was running around him, doctors and nurses, and they did what they had to do to stabilize him, and we could bring him to our home that close to the morning. And when he was at home resting, because I was so in shock, and many persons at home, because family and friends were, knew about what happened, and it was my birthday also.
Oh.
And that day, casualty. And when we were at home, and I was like in shock, crying, and because I couldn't believe that I saw my son die, and he died before us. And he told me, "Mom, I want to speak with you alone, only to you." And I went to his room, and he told me, "Mom, please don't continue crying. Why are you crying?" Because I only think how much you suffer, and I saw you dying, and Mom, I didn't die. I didn't suffer. I didn't suffer in any moment. It was so beautiful. I went to a beautiful place. I didn't want to return, and it was like a dream, and I saw all the moments of my life, when I was child, when I was playing, all my friends, everything. I saw it like a film passing by my mind, and it was beautiful. I didn't want to return. Well, it was a very, very beautiful story that he told me. It was the first time I heard something about that, but I believed him. I believed what he was telling me. And he told me, Mom, don't tell that to anybody, unless to my friends. He was 20 years old, because everybody's gonna think I'm crazy. And no, well, at the beginning of this, I told you that I wrote a book where I tell this experience, and because 2 months after that moment, it was in June, and in August he passed away. He didn't return physically to here. So it was very, very, very hard for me. It was very painful. It was my first son, and all you can imagine. But I always had that, voice in my mind telling, Mom, don't cry. It was beautiful. I didn't want to return. I didn't suffer. And when I was like, I'm a journalist and writer, and when I was like, with strength to do something, to understand what happened to him.
Then you wrote the book. Can I ask as well that you and Elsa talk to each other privately? You can maybe give Elsa, would you give Elisabeth a message about the organization that you're in? Because I think, Elisabeth, you'd be very interested in that.
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
Elsa will get in touch with you to talk about your experience and other organizations. I think that would, because you're in Los Angeles, she's in London.
Okay. So I can write in the chat my email or my...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
what I wanted to tell you, that when I could, when I have more, strength to do it, I began to doing research about this. It was in 1998, and we didn't have at that moment this information, that now is abundant. So in that moment, I began to look for books, because Google at that moment was not like now.
Yeah.
And I got this book of Raymond Moody that I think you know perfectly, Raymond Moody.
Yeah.
And after Elisabeth Kubler-Ross and all of them, they were coming to me, those information, and it's in my book, but it's in Spanish. And I'm going to publish it soon in English.
Thank you, Elisabeth. Would you put the title of your book in the chat?
Yes, of course.
At the bottom line, you can click on the chat for everybody, so they can see the title of your book.
But I can tell you and everybody that, it's real. It's real. I lived it with my son, and now I'm doing workshops and helping person and counseling and everything. And people, when read my book, say, thank you, because now we have hope. It's very difficult for a mom to to heal this, you know,
Yeah.
this lost. Thank you for the time. I'm gonna write
Thank
it.
you. Thank you for sharing that. And do put your book title and name in the chat so everybody can see it. That would be really good.
Okay,
So
thank you. I'm going to put it now. Well, the book now is in Spanish.
yeah, but some people here speak Spanish.
Okay.
So that's okay. So there may be different models of reality. Tim, would you put your reality in the chat as well? Because I didn't fully grasp it. Would you just put a few comments in the chat too?
Okay.
So my question is, why should we study these beliefs? We call them beliefs, but some people have already said they know that they've had experiences and they know. And the beliefs that we have, it influences a patient's expectations of how they're treated by medical and healthcare staff, particularly at times of death and dying. And it's important when we work with migrant populations, because they don't simply leave their beliefs at the point of entry to UK, and even it's relevant for subsequent generations. These beliefs inform people's explanatory models for mental distress, and they may stop them accessing services. Now, as I said in the start, I've already been told that I believe that there's a link, that some people who have visionary and auditory experiences, if the people around them don't understand those experiences, or if they themselves don't understand their experiences, they may say it's a mental health problem. And I've repeatedly been told I'm wrong, that mental health is one thing and these experiences are something else. That's just me. I don't happen to think I'm wrong, but there we go. I'm going to present a little bit about India and karmic carryover, beliefs about what happens after you die. So with the Jain people, all actions, good and bad, attach karmic matter to your soul. So liberation is this: abandon all action or live a life of austerity to release attached karma. With Hindu, the karma is a moral law of cause and effect. So your actions in one life can carry over into the next and determine not only your fate, but of your kin. And then actions can merit reward or punishment. And then Buddhist is good or evil deeds in one life can be recorded or punished in the next. So you have to adhere to the correct path. So there's ways of behaving correctly where you can achieve enlightenment. I've got a case from India of reincarnation. This is an older book published in 1994, where the pilgrims go to Benares and the physical body envelops an ethereal body, and cremation destroys the first body, liberating the second body into the air. And then offerings of rice balls are made to protect the ethereal body as it journeys to the ancestors. And then once it's at the ancestors, then the protective case is removed and the ethereal body can suffer the consequences of past actions. There was an anthropologist, Obeyesekere, in Princeton University, USA, and he said scholars took it for granted that India was the only home of rebirth beliefs with the concepts of karma and reward and salvation. but he said India was only one amongst many places. And he argued that these beliefs on reincarnation are also central to Indigenous Americans, to Africans, to Oceanic people. And the concept of reincarnation could not be brought into line with Western scholars, so they neglected the study of it. And I'd remembered years ago, I was asked to write something on reincarnation, and I included many different societies, and I was told, no, just talk about Hindus. So people wanted to keep the framework of reincarnation narrow. And I'm going to ask, has anybody here had experiences of past lives? Georgie, would you like to say? Would you unmute? Oh yeah.
I'll just be quick. When I go into deep meditation, I guess I regress and I do see certain lives come up. I'm always get quite an Egyptian theme, and then sometimes I go to quite a tribal place as well. Yeah, that's that. But, yeah.
Okay, so you've had experiences of that you call. Thank you. And Peter, did you want to say something? Or Tim? Okay, after Peter, Tim. Will you unmute yourself, Peter?
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you, yes.
Yes. I have trained with Dr. Roger Woolger as a past life regression therapist, also Dr. Hans ten Dam in Holland. So in all the different practices that I did, and then using my regression therapy altogether, I've regressed about 50 people. But in my own case, I've had about 30 past life experiences. And I'm a member of the Scientific and Medical Network. So here's a bit of, well, not propaganda, but about 4 years ago, I started training at the London College of Clinical Hypnosis. And that took 2 years. The courses were accredited by the University of West London. For those that were interested, because most of the people doing the course were therapists doing the hypnotherapy to be another string to their bow, as it were. Anyway, those that wanted could then go to the University of West London to do their MSc.
Are you just speaking about your specific experience rather than because other people wanted to talk?
Sorry. Yeah, yes. So in fact, yes, altogether I've had about 30 past life experiences.
So yeah, so you've got many. So it's time for your book, Peter.
Well, yes, I was just saying, just a few months ago, I graduated from University of West London, Department of Nursing, Midwifery and Mental Health with an MSc in past life regression and hypnotherapy. So Peter Fenwick was saying maybe even 10 years ago, I would not have been able to do that because it went through 2 ethics committees. That's in the Department of Medicine, an MSc in regression therapy.
So times are changing now. Times are changing. All right, thank you, Peter. Tim, did you want to say something? Will you unmute yourself?
No.
Mute, right. Okay, that took some time. Yeah, when I was a small boy, I remembered Kashmir, and I was living in Great Yarmouth, and I didn't know it was Kashmir. I was about 4, and I kept asking my brother and my sister, who took me for walks, why can't we go back to this place? And I described it, and they said, oh, what an imagination you have. There's no such place. And I thought, why aren't they taking me back? Because the memory was as clear as any other memory. And it was only when I actually visited Kashmir that I recognized it. But all our lives are actually happening now. Every single life is actually happening now. And we just focus on one particular life, obviously this one. But in actual fact, our other lives are also happening at the same time.
Maybe that's why I wake up so tired in the morning.
Yeah. or you're busy in your astral body, certainly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tim. Okay, shall I carry on? Let's see where we get to from here.
If someone wants to say something, well, Felba.
Okay, sorry, Elsa.
Someone was hiding.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask something.
Yeah.
I see, can anyone see Tim's room has like these rainbow colors? Why I see that? Does he use some kind of light or it's just?
I'm trying to use a virtual background. And,
oh, I see.
And no, it's not a mystic. That's a good idea. I should pretend it's my aura or something. But but if you go to Zoom, if you click on the camera and the little arrow next to, or whatever, the little upward pointing arrow, if you click on that, you can pick a virtual background. So you then lower a photograph and use that photograph as a background, which is what I've done.
That's great.
Great.
So we're all going to.
I see God behind you.
Did you really see God? Okay, I'm carrying on with reincarnation and memory. There's Professor Paul Badham at University of Wales, Lampeter, where I did teach for a few years. And he claimed there was a strong case for the existence of extrasensory perception. He said if thoughts can pass from one brain to another, then it may be possible for there to be a communication between the living and the dead. And I just put this little example down here from, I liked it, from 1906. There was a scientific experiment done in a hospital, and they were weighing bodies to see that if they weighed something different before they died and after they died. So that if they wanted to know what the soul weighed. So Elsie, you might like that one.
Yes.
There's also Professor Ian Stevenson, who died in 2007, but he was a professor of psychiatry, and he was very interested in reincarnation and memory. And he noticed the pattern of the young children, like Tim, who saw Kashmir, but they were between the ages of 2 and 4, and they told parents of a past life, and they had unusual behavior patterns. And the child often asked to be taken to a place of previous existence. Tim, have you been reading my notes before me? So and then after the age of 5, behavior and memories fade. So this Ian Stevenson, he obtained witnesses and he cross-checked, and he claims his cases can be suggestive of reincarnation. And he's done a huge book he did 225 case studies where people were born with birthmarks or birth defect, and they claimed they were related to past lives. And he selected birthmarks because he thought it provided objective evidence. And he noted behavioural memories and phobias may be related to how people died in the past. But it, particularly in the case of violent deaths, it was remembered in 51% of cases. And sometimes he traced the medical certificate of someone who recalled their past life to see how many correlations they were. And there was one child with a skull who remembered being killed by a blow to the back of the head, had a depressed part on their skull, or another that recalled a case of shooting and it correlated to a birthmark in the head. So he suggests that there was some kind of memory transmitted between lives, and he proposes reincarnation, suitable explanation. So how do you respond to Ian Stevenson's birthmark examples? And do these examples fit your own beliefs about reality? Do they fit? How do these beliefs fit your own reality? Would anybody like to comment?
I like to
Okay.
quickly. Okay, we held several meetings. Dr. Ian Stevenson and the Brazilian scientist Hernani Guimarães Andrade, who researched in Brazil and proved the 80 cases of reincarnation exactly the same way as Dr. Ian Stevenson and now Dr. Jim Tucker, that he's continuing his research. So I am studying spiritism for more than 30 years, and I know that we have previous and incarnations and more reincarnations in the future, as much as we need to evolve. So every mark in our perispirit, if you kill yourself as a suicidal or you have an accident, so these marks go to your perispirit that's imprinted there. When you reincarnate again, this part where you damage or you blow your brain, etc., comes with these problems from the past lives. So the physical body, the spirit needs again to come to the physical body in another body already planned before reincarnation, in order to undergo this trial, and things that only God can take you from the life, this powerful force, you can call other names, but we are a beautiful machine, especially people that commit suicide, and probably most of them comes with autism, with mental problems, apart from the obsessions, okay, the spirits from the past life. So I am truly believe, and I know because the scientists from Brazil, the doctors from the International Medical Spiritist Association, they wrote more than 2,000 papers, academic papers, researches, talking about after-death experience, about reincarnation, about life, eternal life. We are one stage now, many existence. So God is merciful, is justice. It's impossible to live just one life.
Yeah, so many lives, and it isn't everybody's beliefs. And this linking it with health, I've been repeatedly told I'm wrong, but obviously I don't think I'm wrong. But thank you, Elsa, for explaining that. I've got some experiences of memory of the Holocaust. There was this psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, who happened to be Jewish, and he survived from a Nazi concentration camp. And he suggested that meaning in life was more important than happiness. And he actually survived a camp. But I became interested in this because there were many others who were not in the Holocaust, but who had memories of being in a concentration camp. And I myself had memories. I'd love to have had memories of being a princess or something like that, but I had memories of being in a concentration camp, and this was not my ancestral line. But I started looking into other people who had those experiences. And then I wondered if it's possible, as people have said, can these memories creep into our present from distant incarnations, and could they influence mental health episodes? So I'm wondering, could some memories stretch beyond childhood trauma into the present life and beyond the parents' trauma? And the Haraldson has done some research on this with children, and he said children who report memories of violent deaths in past lives may suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. So my question is it possible that people who have mental distress or extreme experiences, could it be possible that they're responding to trauma not only from their current incarnation, but also from a previous incarnation? Or could they remotely tune into consciousness? As I say, I've repeatedly been told I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. There's an experience from Sam Parnia, who was an emergency care doctor in New York. And when his patients were clinically dead, they gave accounts of experiences. And then he started collecting their stories. And he did his own experiments. And once he started collecting the stories, other cardiologists told him about their patients flatlining and then returning to life. And so he suggested this study of near-death experience will allow us to understand more about survival after death. And in the old days, by the old days, I mean 20, 30 years ago, people assumed these experiences were hallucinations. There were different explanations, that there was chemical problems in the brain, lack of oxygen, it was the drugs. But what Sam Parnia says is the near-death experiences were well structured, clearly thought out processes, and people remembered them for a long time, but they weren't like hallucinations. So people had complete recall. And this example is unusual. I always present it when I've been teaching medical students in Brighton, when I was teaching there for 15, 16 years, that this was a medical person who started collecting the testimonies of people who'd had organ donation, and they had they claimed to have memories from the donor. And there was this one story of an 8-year-old girl who received the heart of a murdered 10-year-old, and then had such disturbing nightmares that her mother took her to a psychiatrist. And then, both based on the girl's descriptions, her mother and the psychiatrist went to the police, and they found and convicted the donor's murder. I don't know how true this is, but then my question is, you know, was it a fabricated story? Is it possible for the heart cells to retain a memory? Is the brain the only organ that can keep a memory, or can other body parts keep a memory? And how would you respond if somebody told you stories about from an organ donor's memory? So what do you believe? How would you interpret this? Is it telepathy from the deceased, or was it spirit possession by the overshadowing? So what do you believe? How do you interpret those things? Has anybody got any comments they'd like to make?
I think that my information here, Rupert Sheldrake, he has morphogenic patterning. That is very interesting. Is a not long ago research about this morphogenetic. I believe that we impregnate because our cells are small animals that is living animals, have memory to reproduce themselves. I believe they can keep some info, and this info goes to another body and gives some information. As you touch some stone of your church, and you have immediately something in your brain, this church belongs this, belongs that, you know the information. There's a name for that. It's a scientific research as well. But as we plan our life before incarnation, we know in advance everything that will happen. Thanks God that our memory in physical body is, we don't keep everything, otherwise we can be crazy. If I live with my father, and my father was my killer in past life, now is my father, could be no good to remember these kind of things. But yes, everything is possible. We know almost nothing regarding spiritual life. As much as we study academic researches, but I know, I myself, almost nothing. There are more things to discover, or to recover, because it's there. It's natural in divine laws. It's written in the nature.
Yes. So there are explanations. Tim, did you want to make an explanation? Try again.
Yeah, that's okay. It takes a couple of seconds to appear. Yeah, I put it in the chat box. I love the theosophical model, and they would say we have several bodies, not just a physical body, and some of the inner bodies can carry memories, so that when you, and we speculated about how transplants would work as soon as they began, and our theories have been confirmed by the examples you just gave, that a person's etheric body, which will go along with the physical organ. So the recipient will receive the consciousness of the donor's etheric body. And then it depends which has got the stronger energy. You know, a more powerful personality attached to the organ will be more influential on the recipient, whereas a stronger recipient personality will overrule the donor's personality. And that
all right,
makes sense to me. Okay.
Thank you, Tim. Jamie, did you want to make a comment?
Hey, yes, thank you, Natalie. I wanted to quickly intervene because I broke my ACL ligament, which is one of the most important ligaments on your knee. And when I was about to have the surgery to replace it, I had three options: either a corpse, pig, or my own body's tendon. But if I choose to have a corpse tendon, they would make me sign up a waiver where I would be completely responsible in case the person's before his death had a psychiatry or it was an issue that was very specific. Was something like a psychotic episode that I would be responsible if after the transplant I would get any psychotic episode. imagine. So I just wanted to say that. And of course, I chose my own tandem because I guess it's known also in the medical field that organs and tissues can actually transfer any disease and mental disease as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. There's that book, The Body Remembers. Is it by Rothschild? That our own body remembers, let alone organ donation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we remember. I think I've just got a few more slides left. Let's have a look and see where we go. So I put this in because it seems that the beliefs in reincarnation and karma influences whether or not people seek health strategies. And then we've just had that example from Jamie. So these beliefs do influence what health we have. And I've just got one example from India of what is a person? What is a person made of? Is it a breath, a body, a soul? It seems that the identity isn't fixed at the skin, and that there's good and bad death, of good and bad ways to die, and there's good and bad spirits of the dead. There's mischievous spirits of the dead, and it seemed in India that a person's body was permeable to the spirits of the dead. Some people use the term possession, that spirits can influence a living person. And then people who die a good death get cremated and then are reborn and renewed. And those who die a bad death are blocked from being reborn and hang about, annoying the living. And there's the narrative that much human misfortune is attributed to ghosts of those who died an untimely death. And I know I've shown this picture before, but I like it. This was a Buddha sculpture that's 1,000 years old. And when it went for a CT scan, then they found out that there was a living dead person inside. And some practicing Buddhists say that the mummies aren't dead, but they're in an advanced state of meditation. So that's another view about personhood. And then what are our beliefs about what happens after life? Do we think there's some kind of afterlife, or do you think when a person dies that consciousness dies with them? So I don't know what's happened there, but something has. So what do we believe happens when we go? Has anybody got a comment? Wei, what would you like to say?
Well, from Chinese medicine point of view, that we have one soul, but the soul has two parts. The one part of the soul is called Po, is rested in our lung. And then we have this ethereal soul, which is rested in the liver. So when we die, the soul in the lung will come out from the person's last breath. And then the ethereal soul will leave the body from the anus. And that part of the soul will go on to the eternal life. You know, when the liver is extremely important for human health. It's basically, if you have some physical problems and then you go to see a Chinese medicine practitioner, they only look at three things, which is your stomach and your spleen, your digestive system, your liver, and then your kidneys. And people have kidney problems, you can't not look at their liver. So, you know, there is a condition, medical condition called jaundice, that is a liver condition, but the eye turns into yellow. So the eyes, they're the windows of the liver. And if you look at people's eyes nowadays, many of them have this cloudy, not clear, you know, eyes. That's really a reflection of the condition of the liver. And if you meet someone, you need to see their eyes. So if someone is looking down, you don't see their eyes, and so you don't meet their soul. That's what I mean. So, yeah, what did we talk about before that these organs has memories? You know, we have a saying, it's called gut feeling. And normally that's referred to your true feeling, that when you're encountering some difficult situations, you need to make decisions. Normally, people know that they shouldn't rush. They should listen to themselves. What is yourself? It's your gut, which is, you know, it's your liver and your kidneys and then your stomach. It's not the brain. The brain is the reflection of your internal organs. You know, it's like when we're drunk, you know, you had a few drinks, you feel drunk, and your eyes look different, and then you can't walk straight. So, and people know, you know, we can't drink all the time. That destroys the liver, you know, and then that gives us mental problems. And also, you know, when we were formed in our mother's wombs, our brain cells and our gut cells, they're exactly the same cells. So now I know that many psychiatrists and neurologists, when they're treating people with mental problems, they treat their gut, which is to change their diet, and then the person can feel more balanced and better. So that's just what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Wei. So many cells of the body have memory. So can I ask, I'd like to finish there. How did people find, would you unmute yourself and just say how you found today's session? Just one or two words. Krishna, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that for me, you know, I come from the Hindu background. So in many ways, you know, you've covered quite a lot of it, which is probably, I would say, the belief system I come from, reincarnation, and then karmic things that you said, you know, what we do, you know, what we sow, we reap, and all this kind of stuff. But it's very so deeply embedded, I suppose, even though I grew up in Africa and have lived here in UK for a long time. But those belief systems which I grew up with and I've kind of experimented and thought about it a long time because of the cultural changes I went through migration. And I think for me, I feel comfortable thinking about reincarnation, and I personally think it possibly was around everywhere before the books were changed. That's what I'm going to say.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you, Krishna. Would
you.
anybody else like a final comment?
Could I say, I came to the discussion late, but because of another meeting, but I found it quite stimulating. And it reminds me of a song, There Are More Questions Than Answers. And I think that's what I got from the last, the slide that I watched and the discussion and the comments, that in a sense, it's better to be open-minded, because I come from a tradition where reincarnation is a no-no. It's appointed to man to live once, and after that, judgment. And it's something that's been drummed into us for years. But the sort of examples you gave, memories and organs, etc., whatever it is, it shows we don't really have the full picture. So it's just interesting, and thanks for a stimulating presentation. And hopefully I'll get a chance to listen to it, the whole thing, at another time.
Okay, thank you, Nana. Thank you for turning up for the first time.
Yeah, hi.
That's great. Yeah, so there's not one answer, there's multiple explanations. Paul, would you like to say something? If you unmute yourself.
Oh yeah, I just typed some words into the chat box. It's really difficult for me to describe the experience without resorting to cliches, I suppose. It's such broad-ranging material and such profound material, I will have to reflect upon it for some time to try and work out what particular meaning it has for me. I find it very difficult to define my own individual beliefs. I grew up in a kind of in an essentially Protestant community in South Wales, but in a Catholic part of that community, and I attended Catholic ceremonies from a young age. So my early experiences of any kind of spiritual life were very kind of authoritarian, very carefully defined, and I eventually rejected that, but I haven't reached, I suppose, a firm conclusion upon what spirituality means for me. And my general perspective is, I don't know what I don't know. There's only one way of finding out what happens after we die. And when we do find out, our means of communicating that experience are very, very limited, aren't they? So I'm open-minded, and the boundaries of my reality shift all the time.
Yeah, thank you. And today we've heard so many cases from different perspectives, and that's what I really appreciate with the people coming in and saying their perspectives, because it seems that there's what's the saying, there's many rooms in the house. Yes, there's many ways of thinking. Did anybody else want to make a final comment, a brief comment? Elisabeth, would you like to?
Yes, I only want to say that at the moment that I knew that my son passed away, the second time, I was like, I had an experience very, 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 very powerful. I feel like a little person in a huge black face, and I heard that voice very clearly saying, you don't control anything. You are a point in the universe. You belong to something greater. So that was a very clear voice, and I can hear it now after 20 years. And I think that everything is related to love. Love is the key of everything. If you don't learn to love in this life, you need to return to learn how to love. And you can love beyond life. That's because you never are separated from the loved one that passed away, because love is continuing. Is like what is that? Is love beyond life is the key.
All right, thank you. So on that note, we'll say that love is the key. And for those that hope to come back, may you return. And for those who want to be here once, let's see that. We don't have the answer. Would you like to say goodbye to everybody?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining in. I do appreciate everybody.
Thank you, Natalie.
Multiple narrative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much.
Thank you, Natalie.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.